New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Fresno, the heart of the Central Valley. The Central Valley, the heart of the great state of California. A lot of heart going on here, a lot of creativity, a lot of goodness, and a lot of greatness, and I hope you have opened your day today by claiming, accepting, and experiencing the greatness that the gift of the divine principle has provided for you in opportunity for this day. This is your day. This is the day that God made, as they say. And they made it, she made it, just for you. However you want to make that understanding for yourself, and it's important that you make that understanding for yourself, because at the level of your understanding, it's that level that is tied to the level of your faith and your belief in this divine principle. And it's awesome. And you're awesome. You're awesome by the mere fact that you are living. There's one life. That life is God. That life is our life now, individualized as each and every one of us. And we're going to talk about that. Couple weeks ago, well, it's been a little bit longer than that, I ended the series I did based on the book by Ernest Holmes. The newer title is The Art of Life. It used to be called This Thing Called Life. And I had some requests to go back and do a short series on the book that Dr. Holmes wrote called This Thing Called You. And so I have This Thing Called You here in front of me. I believe it's still in print, and I don't think they've changed the title on it, but you never know. Things happen, things change, but we're here. You know, I talk about greatness, and in today's time, the realization that we truly are great, and we need no other affirmation regarding our greatness than just our own personal realization. And it saddens me sometimes because there are people in the world that fail to make that realization for themselves, and they suffer the consequences because it is done unto us as we believe. We should all be successful. We should all be able to live life with a higher and greater degree of livingness, as Judge Ford wrote in, I believe it's the Edinburgh Lectures, and I may get back to that before the show's over today. We are tasked with the life experience at the highest level that we can live it. That's you, not someone else. Oftentimes, we look at the TV, or we look at, now it's on the internet, on our computer, and we see individuals, groups of individuals, and boy, they're great, they're glamorous, or whatever. Social media has done a great job for making people feel bad with all the different ways of shaming people, or well, I'll just leave it at that, right? But we don't have to own that. We can own something totally different. This is what we teach in Science of Mind and Spirit, that we have available to us, we have access to the greatest, most powerful, most all-knowing creative source and force in the universe. It waits only on us to recognize it. And the great thing is that recognition doesn't take place outside of ourselves. We don't have to go somewhere to buy it. We don't have to join some group to get it. We just have to realize the truth of who we are. Big bite for people sometimes, but it's a true bite. So This Thing Called You, Ernest Holmes, originally published, I believe, in 1948, and I won't say how many years before my birth that was, but it wasn't too long. But Holmes wrote this in 1948, and he opens chapter 1. He says, "You, like all others, are seeking the joy of living. You wish to be needed, to be loved, to be included in the great drama of life. This urge is in every individual. It is in everything. The rose exists to express beauty." And he goes on to talk about how the root and the trunk and the branches also support the rose. But you, I'm going to go back to his first sentence again. You, like all others, are seeking the joy of living. How did Dr. Holmes know that about you? He wrote this in 1948, but it's as true today as it was when he wrote it. You have within you that which seeks to create life, like I say, at a higher, greater degree of livingness. And as we go through this chapter, we'll just do chapter 1 in the book today. Sometimes we may do more than one chapter, but I want to take our time today as we go through chapter 1. You have a right. You have a right by the mere fact that you are self-aware. Believe it or not, you have a right to live your life at a higher, greater degree of livingness. I wish people had told me that years ago when I was busy. Well, we're not going to go there, but we all have those times in our life, right, when we were busy with things that weren't necessarily life-affirming or that didn't support a greater, higher degree of livingness. And we all know people, if not ourselves, but we know people that are stuck. They're stuck in their self-imposed misery, unhappiness. You know, we look, psychology talks to us about the various conditions that individuals in today's life are dealing with, and all you have to do is look out your window, however you define your window, whether it's through the internet, I have my laptop sitting over there, or whether it's literally the window in the building in the house where you live. Look out, and it's sad. It's sad because it doesn't have to be that way. It's that way because people believe that it has to be that way, and therefore, and we know and understand that it's done unto us as we believe. So it's time to be changing some beliefs. Whose beliefs do we need to change? Well, it's not those people out there. It's our own. As we change our own, as we uplift ourselves, as we create a greater, more expressive, positive, living life experience for ourselves, our light will shine brighter. And in that brightness, others will become aware of it, and they too will find that there is that within them which seeks to live life at a higher, greater level. Now, whether they seek you out or whether they're led by their own intuition to a place of philosophy or spirituality that helps them improve, all they have to do is recognize that desire within them and answer that desire. And that's all we have to do, too. And in answering that desire, what are we doing? In answering that desire, and what we're going to talk about through this series, is that we are opening up our mind, our consciousness, to this infinite source of all that is, that exists everywhere. It's infinite. But our connection is within, and when we say within ourselves, it's not like we've got to, hop in an elevator in our brain and run it down to our diaphragm or something like that. It's within, as in it is a part of the mental structure of our beingness. And that's why this thing called you is such an incredible thing. And that's why I chose to answer those individuals that asked me to make this available. So that's what we're doing. So, okay, first sentence. Holmes says, I'm going to read this again. You, like all others, are seeking the joy of living. We all are. Even if we're doing good, we want to do even better. And there are some people that will cast aspersions on that. But if you're living in alignment with principle, and we've talked about it, and we will talk about it more today, but if we're living in alignment with principle, the better, the higher degree of livingness, the greater the expression for ourselves, the greater that other people around us will also be experiencing based on what it is that we are, what it is that we're doing. As we raise ourselves, we raise those around us up also. We create a greater and better world by creating a greater and better self. So he says here, and he goes, the artist will starve in his garret, that he may chisel an angelic form from a slab of marble, compelling the unyielding substance to accept his breath of creation. Someone that realizes that there is a creativeness within them, however we understand that. And it may be that creativeness may be in writing, it may be in just living life, it may be being a parent or a teacher, it may be competing. It's infinite, okay? But once we tie into it, once we begin to realize that it's there awaiting us, there's a self-generating motivation that begins to take hold, if you will. So he says, not only human beings, but everything in nature is endowed with this creative urge. And we all are. And he says, okay, I'm going to skip this part because it's not what I thought it was going to be. He says, evolution is proof of an irresistible urge which pushes everything onward and upward. Man did not create life. He is something that lives in form and by it and from it. We didn't create it, but we live it. There's one life. That life is our life. My life, your life. He says, we cannot escape life or the necessity of giving expression to it through living. That's what we do. You may think, as I talked about in the opening, as I open this up, that this idea of living at higher, greater degrees of livingness, that belongs to someone else. You live. Think about it. You live. What do you live? You live life. It's individualized as you, but why do you live this life? Do you live it to be a couch potato? Do you live it to be miserable, unhappy? Why do you live? Think about that, because there is an answer. And the answer is you live because there's a divine principle, a presence, a power in the universe that is the principle, power, and presence behind all that is. And therefore, you are an expression of that as you. Think about that also. You are an expression of the divine as you. Incredible. Amazing. Most of us only give lip service to it, even in the New Thought philosophies, because to truly envelop that as a level of consciousness can sometimes even be scary. Oftentimes it's beyond our ability to believe it. It's like too good to be true, if you will, but it's not. In some way, you know not of, through some process which never reveals its face, life has entered into you, and with it, the irresistible impulse to create. And we're not talking even necessarily formal creation, if you will. We're talking about creating just as you awaken in the morning and choose to live at a higher, greater degree of livingness. Choose to accept the gift of today and know that the giver of that gift gave this day to you specifically for you to live your life. And in that owning, in that mindset, in a sense, you are unconquerable in that day, no matter what the day may bring. So we're going to hang for that, come back after our first commercial break, and I'll pick it up then. I'll see you then.
You enter this door with expired tags. Beyond is another dimension, a dimension of regulations, a dimension of long waits. You have reached the registration zone. What looks like an ordinary shop is actually Mitchell Smog, located in the heart of the Tower District, a few minutes from the DMV. Mitchell Smog offers your vehicle a STAR-certified smog inspection. So remember Mitchell Smog when you need to pass through the registration zone.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
Hello everyone, my name is Miss G. I offer fun and affordable promotion and advertisement on my talk show. It is called Fresno Vibes. We talk, we play awesome music. I also feature a bunch of different bartenders from different places. I like to have restaurants. I like to have any event, any kind of fun stuff. Contact me at rmgmissg@gmail.com and we will have so much fun and we will promote your business, promote your event right here on my show. So contact me. we'll have fun. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Chris DeVold. Tune in every Friday night on CentralValleyTalk.com when I bring you Sex, Drugs, Chris DeVold, where I'll give you 3 guesses on what we talk about. And I also vow to bring you 1 live local music act a week. So tune in every week because you never know what kind of music you're going to hear right here on CentralValleyTalk.com.
A dynamic litigator, in-tune listener, and forward thinker with almost a decade of experience, Nasser Nekomanish is a skilled attorney servicing clients throughout the Central Valley. When you need a lawyer, call 559-441-0114 and ask for Nasser Nekomanish.
Today, we bring you the first part of our global broadcast exclusive conversation.
The streets of Tahrir have once again been filled.
Key issues here at the United Nations Climate Change Conference remain unresolved.
Police are saying the protesters to move further and further away.
I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. Today we're going through the book by Ernest Holmes called This Thing Called You. And I'm working through chapter 1, kind of through, but I'm going to bounce off some other things. But I wanted to hit this now, and we'll get back to it later. And this is in the last part of the chapter. And Holmes writes, he says, just try to catch the larger vision and realize that there have been and are people, many of them, who have wooed and wed some invisible presence until its atmosphere and essence have become woven into the fabric of their own existence. We all know people like that. They live life with more gusto or more enthusiasm, and oftentimes when we see them, we feel like, well, that's, boy, I wish I could do that, or, I'm not able to, all the other limiting thoughts and beliefs that we may hold. And he goes on, he says, think about this, every person is a doorway, as Emerson said, through which the infinite passes into the finite, through which God becomes the individual, through which the universal becomes the individual. There is a doorway that life passes through for each and every one of us. We are gifted with this thing called life. It's an energy that seeks to, as a way of kind of proving this point, think about trying to go through your day without speaking to anybody, without thinking of anything, and without doing anything, accomplishing anything, and just sitting there vegetating. You can't do it. Now, there are people that, unfortunately, they live their lives at a level just a little bit above that, but they don't live it at that level, because life seeks to express, even if it's in thoughts, even if those thoughts are not harmonious, uplifting thoughts. Life seeks to express. We are the arbiters of what thoughts pass through our mind, our consciousness, and in that ability to make a choice, we can choose life affirming, life uplifting, or we can choose life limiting. And oftentimes we make that choice. And unfortunately, we make that choice because we feel that we are subject to life outside of us, that therein is where the power is for us to be happy, to express, to do whatever, but that's not true. The true power exists at the core of our beingness, this thing called God principle. Going back now, and this is from the Dore lectures by Judge Trord. In chapter 2, he starts off, individuality is the necessary complement of the universal spirit. It's the necessary complement. Individuality, the you, the me. He says, which was the subject of his consideration last Sunday, that's earlier in the book. He says, the whole problem of life consists in finding the true relation of the individual, that's us, the individual, our relation to universal originating spirit, that which we call God, first cause, principal source, however it is that you understand that. He says, and the first step towards asserting this is to realize what the universal spirit must be, what it must be in itself. And that is, it must be livingness. It must be creativeness. And he goes on, he says, the essence of the Spirit is life, love, and beauty. That's its motive, or primary moving impulse, is to express life, love, and beauty, which it feels itself to be. All right, so the question is, how's your life today? How's your life in general? Is it a life that is affirming love and beauty and harmony, abundance, wholeness, health, and all the good stuff that we could add to that? It is or it isn't. Now, we may say, well, there's parts of my life where it's a little better than other parts of my life. Your life experience is really tied to the lowest expression of livingness that you are expressing. You may have good moments, but if you have something that's holding you back, it will color, it will affect, and it will basically purpose everything else in your life. Isn't it time to move away from that? Isn't it time to break the bonds that have held you in prison in your day-to-day experience? And it's great, and you can do that. And the thing is, no one else can do it for you. And unfortunately, we've been taught that we need to look outside of ourselves for things that will rescue us, that will make our life better. I'm not here saying that life is necessarily easy. It wasn't meant to be easy. Life is meant to be something that challenges us, so once again, that we can live at a greater and higher degree of livingness. And we have the basic tools that at the core of our being that we can tap into, touch, go to, utilize. But those tools have been, shall we say, secreted away from us by people that have told us that you can't, you're not good enough. Only this person, only this group of people, this tribe versus that tribe, this, that versus this, that, and the other. And we've bought into that as our truth. I've often said on the show, we are all created equal, but we're not all born into equal situations, into equal conditions. Now, having said that, the caveat to that is, but we all have the toolbox contained at the depth of our being, for waiting there for us to discover, that can lift us out of any condition. Any condition we can overcome. But it starts with belief. It starts with a belief of understanding of who we are. And that's why we're doing this book. But I want to go to something here. This is at the end of the general summary in the Science of Mind book. And the reason why I'm doing this now, although it's not directly related, it is important to understand as one of the things that we've got to do. We have to stop waiting for. We have to stop just reading books. We have to stop thinking that, one of these days we're going to get to it. And here it is. At the end of the teaching, the general summary, Ernest Holmes writes, in conclusion, what the world needs is spiritual conviction. Are you up for that? What the world needs is spiritual conviction, followed by spiritual experience. Spiritual experience, available to each and every one of us, intimately personal, right there, we can do and we can find. He says, I would rather see a student of this science of mind and spirit, prove its principle. Rather prove its principle than to have him or her repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It is far easier to teach the truth. It's far easier to intellectualize the truth than it is to practice it. But there's where the rubber meets the road. something called practice. Practice. You know, practice is a very interesting thing. Practice doesn't make perfect, but practice does make improvement. And as you continue to put into practice the tools that we teach in Science and Mind and Spirit or other New Thought philosophies, as you put them into practice in your life, you will begin to reap the rewards of that practice, just like a musician or just like anyone else that needs to express at a certain level of skill in their life in order to be, do, or have that which they want to be, do, or have. It's practice. Practice isn't easy, oftentimes. Practice is boring, sometimes. Practice is inconvenient for our schedule, often. But our commitment to practice, once we commit to it and continue to live at the level of that commitment, it will reap great bounty in our day-to-day life experience. And oftentimes this happens without us even realizing it until all of a sudden one day we turn around and, wow, how did we get here? Isn't this amazing? And oftentimes, unfortunately, sometimes people, when they get there, fail to give credit due to themselves and the practice they put in. Something I heard recently, because I often compare putting this into practice, putting these principles, putting these tools into practice, just like a musician or an athlete practices for their sport or the particular type of instrument they play. But I heard something the other day, and it struck me, and I'm going to share it with you. It's a very interesting concept. You know, pianos. Pianos are great instruments. They make beautiful music. A lot of people have pianos in their home. But you know, the average person, if they take care of their piano, will have it tuned once, maybe more than once a year, but not very often. But a pianist who is of great skill in playing this instrument oftentimes has it tuned on a weekly or even more than a weekly basis, believe it or not. I mean, it's amazing. Think about what it takes to tune a piano, and yet they have someone come in and do it that often. And you know why they do it that often? They do it that often because the music that they want to make when they play that instrument has got to be at a level of quality that they want to experience as they play it. You are that instrument. The spiritual practices that you use and utilize in your day-to-day life experience is that retuning within yourself so that the music that you play in your life will be at an ever greater and higher degree of wonderment, and it's something that you can experience. It's awesome. It was a great metaphor. I like that a lot. Anyway, we got to take our next break, and I'll see you when we come back.
Are you thinking of selling your home? Since 2004, the Souza Group, brokered by eXp Realty, has specialized in premier property listings and sales located in the Clovis Unified and North Fresno markets. The Souza Group will do their best to exceed your expectations. Visit ClovisUnifiedHomes.com. If your home floods, who will you call? When your house springs a leak, it's time to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-213-9430. Clean Master will be there in 60 minutes to start fixing your home. And Clean Master bills your insurance directly, saving you the hassle because you've got enough to worry about. Clean Master also offers carpet and upholstery cleaning, carpet repair, pet odor removal, and more. Remember, Clean Master Emergency Flood Service. 559-213-9430 and visit cleanmasterflood.com. Pour yourself a glass of Crybaby wine available at the market and Sam's Italian Deli. And remember to ask for Crybaby wine at your favorite restaurant.
Forget about the higher good of food, right? You're growing a product that people enjoy really all over the world. I mean, how does that make you feel?
I think about that all the time. I think about the families sitting around a table, enjoying a meal. I just see that what we do brings families together.
I mean, we're blessed. We're in paradise for food.
The Kern family of the Kern Family Farm invites you to eat delicious, nutritious, organic produce available at the Gnarly Carrot. Located at 32954 Road 222 in North Park, California, the Gnarly Carrot is a local, natural, seasonally changing market offering a wide range of products from local Central Valley vendors. Get your caffeine fix, grab a smoothie, and support small businesses. Learn more at KernFamilyFarm.com and visit the Gnarly Carrot today. Dr. in Sukasa allows you to connect with your doctor when you need a quick treatment. Avoid a trip to a medical clinic or emergency room and connect by video with your doctor from your home, work, or anywhere. Just go to drinsukasa.com on your phone, tablet, or computer. Dr. in Sukasa provides quality care that is convenient, bilingual, and affordable, so you are never left without access to health care. Visit drinsukasa.com today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. So we're going through this thing called You, written by Ernest Holmes. So we talked about in some way which you know not of, through some process which never reveals its face, life has entered into you, and with it the irresistible impulse to create. And I talked about this concept, because we think of creating as something artistic or maybe something a writer or a musician does. The very fact that you live through the day is a creative process. For each of us, that really is kind of the baseline of our creativeness. If we make a choice, like I open most every show with before we open our eyes in the morning, claiming our good, giving thanks for the day, and knowing that regardless of what life brings at us, what the day brings at us, we have a bigger God than anything. So, bring it on, so to speak. And again, that's not I'm not saying that all days are going to be filled with joy and happiness. That's not so. But the stream of our life experience is something that we have an incredible ability to govern, choose how that's going to unfold. But most of us, we give it up to somebody else, something else outside of ourselves. He says, create or perish is the eternal mandate of nature. Create or perish. Now, at a baseline human experience, if we don't at least create within our own day, we are going to essentially perish, whether that's perish in heart, perish in our consciousness, perish in our families, in our life expression. It's going to happen. We have to make a choice, and we do. Oftentimes we make this choice at a lower level, and we make it unconsciously. I've got to go to work, I got to do this, I got to be a parent, I got to be a student, I got to be, a partner in a relationship, I gotta. How about let's rewind the day all the way back? Instead of I gotta, we realize that there's a power and a presence for good that is available to us, that we can couple with that, if you will, because it's not something that we are united with as like a plug into a wall socket is united. It's something that there is a unity. We are not individualized aspects of something that the divine puts out here as this is life for this person, this is life for that person. Not so. One of the metaphors that I like to use on a regular basis, imagine, if you will, that the divine is this infinite gem, like a diamond, and each one of us is an individualized facet in that gem. And we were created to be a part of that gem, but we are individual in our part of that gem, just like each facet in a diamond is individualized. The diamond is not the facet, but the facet has a great and direct effect on the brilliance of the diamond. And we have a great and direct effect on the brilliance of life itself. And as we do for ourselves, so we do for those around us. And we bring them up. And we, through our light shining brighter, through our clearer understanding of our truth, we, like I say, we lift others up. We pull them up with us. We become a light in our life, in our family, in our community, and so on. He says, create or perish is the eternal mandate of nature. He says, be constructive or be frustrated is the equal demand. You cannot escape the conclusion that whatever this thing is which is seeking to express through everything, this thing we call life, okay, it can find satisfactory outlet only through constructive and life-giving creativeness. Life seeks to express life ever greater and more abundantly. There is, where we are. Okay, in the last segment, I'm going to refer back to an article that I recently read about the understanding of the universe as consciousness. It's a great article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to touch on a couple things. But we are a demonstration of consciousness demonstrating as itself. We, as all life on this orb that we call Earth, we are an expression of one life. And I have laid this out in other shows, and I'll give it real brief. If you go back to the time before there was life on the planet, just a rock. And then all of a sudden we have life. And that's a few years, eons, epochs, whatever, between no life and what scientists understand and define life as. And that's basically, we're getting at the single-cell organism, okay? So at some point, we have single-cell organisms living on this planet, and that's it. That's life. How do those organisms multiply? Well, they multiply by growing to a point to where essentially it becomes difficult for that organism to sustain itself, so it splits into two. So now you have one cell, and then you have two cells. So that new cell, or the two new cells, because it's really not like one cell separating off the old cell. We now have two cells, right? Is there new life? No. It's the same life that was in that one original cell. It's now expressing in two cells. Now, fast forward a few millennia, and all of a sudden now we have organisms, and organisms may have male and female biological aspects to them because it's more efficient in the evolutionary process, and that's a story for another day. But so now you have a female and you have a male, and we talk about the fertilization process. So that fertilization process on both sides of that is still life. The resulting organism that results from the fertilization that begins to grow as an individual, whether it be a human being or any other organism, including plant life, because it works kind of the same way. Is that new life? Is there new life that's been created for that, or is that just another more expanded expression of the one life? It's just a further expansion of that one life. So when you look around, all that you see is still this one life expressing in many infinite ways, individualized in many different things, but it's still just that one life. And that life is you for your life expression and experience. It's your individualized aspect. It's your individualized place, and you're not here, like I said earlier in the show, you're not here just to exist. You're here to express. Life seeks to express itself. And unfortunately, humanity over many years struggled with learning truth about who it is. And maybe in more recent times, we've kind of come to that point to where we can recognize there is a greater truth. But I won't say that that's necessarily something that had to come about in modern times, because there are ancient spiritual cultures that also, at some level, had that realization. But today, We have it. We have the ability to transmit it, to share it. We have the ability to understand and explain in scientific language, if you will, the whys and the wherefores, that why is it that we want to get up and have a great day, each and every one of us? Why is it that we're unhappy if we're not expressing life at greater and higher degrees? There are answers to those questions, and there's answers to the desires of your heart also. Unfortunately, oftentimes when people, I'll use the word broken in consciousness, broken in understanding, and they have an understanding that in order for them to express, they've got to take from others. And that's expressed in many very ugly ways that we often refer to as evil. And it's sad, because when we reach that individualized realization that potentially for us, everything we need, want, and desire to express at greater and higher degrees in this life is already here and available for us, and it takes nothing from anybody else. We're not cookie-cuttered people. We're stamped not as same, but we are evolved individually and created individually, because in our individualization, we express this thing that we call God or consciousness or first cause. We express it in ways that no other organism has. Think about this. You know, when I was a kid, I used to marvel at the idea that there's no one that's ever lived before or after that's had the same fingerprint as I. That's kind of cool, I thought. But think about this. There, in all the history of humanity, there is no individual that has lived life as you live life, that has reacted to life as you react to life, has embodied life as you embody life. It goes down to our fingerprints. It actually goes down to the level of the cells that exist in, we got a few of them in our body, don't we? Something like maybe 10 or 12. Actually, I think it's more like about between 50 and 70 trillion cells. And yet those cells that exist within each of us is still as individual as that cell is, as we are in the whole life scheme. It's an amazing thing. It boggles the mind. But think about it, only boggles the mind if we have nothing to attribute it to. But if we have a realization that there is an infiniteness that is creating infinitely, that's just the business as usual concept. But what a concept, right? And we are the expression. And it has gifted us. And our gift back, I've heard many different times from many different individuals. God's gift to us is our life. Our gift back to God is how we live it, how we choose to live it. And, you know, oftentimes when we refer to life, particularly through the eyes of the teaching of the master teacher in the New Testament, when Jesus refers to God as Father, Abba, you know, we put ourselves in that. That's not a bad understanding for us to put ourselves in. It's not a reality per se, and if you need it to be mom or grandma or however it is that you need to understand your relationship to the creative source, but you are the child, the expression of that. And what loving parent wants their child to fail? What loving parent that has everything available to it wants to keep from that which is its own expressed creation? That's where we want to be in mind and understanding. We're going to take our last break, and I'll see you when we come back.
Hi, everyone. I am Sparkle Sujin with the Everything Sparkle Show. Tune in every Thursday live at 4 p.m. You will see people that are motivational, inspirational, inspiring, and of course, entertaining. We have a great time. We learn things about how big celebrities are inspiring big names here in Fresno. Hugh Hefner is the reason we have Fresno Magazine, and Gnarly Charlie got his start because Johnny Carson told him to. So, tune in, you'll learn something new, and have a good time.
Visit the beautiful city of Exeter and visit ExeterChamber.com. The Chamber's mission is to promote, support, and enable Exeter to prosper, creating a strong local economy, promoting community, and providing networking opportunities. Follow the Chamber on Facebook and Twitter, or give the Chamber a call at 559-592-2919. Call PG's Catering for all your special occasions. Available to cook any variety of foods and desserts that will leave your taste buds wanting more. Call 559-558-2682 and follow Peaches on Instagram and Facebook.
Is everything in life draining you? Come to Stretch 360. Our professional staff can offer you many options for relaxation like deep tissue or hot stone massages, infrared medical grade sauna. Once you leave us, you'll look and feel like $1,000,000. Stretch 360. Relaxation is only a stretch away.
Call Nicole Hamilton McManus at 559-917-3040 to buy this perfect, romantic, rustic ranch with a 2-home setup. Located only 12 miles from the entrance to Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Parks. This beautifully maintained property boasts of amenities and custom features. The main home is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,670 square feet. The guest home is 2 bedrooms, 1 bath with 1,163 square feet. Also features a 75-foot lap pool, a cabana, a beautiful garden, and 2 small nearby ponds. Call Nicole Hamilton McManus at 559-917-3040. The Art of...
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. Okay, I found the link I wanted to share a little bit with you from, and so I'm going to read this. It says, in the past 40 years or so, a strange fact about our universe gradually made itself known to scientists. The laws of physics and the initial conditions of our universe are fine-tuned for the possibility of life. It turns out that for life to be possible, the numbers in basic physics, for example, the strength of gravity or the mass of the electron must have a value falling within a certain range. And that range is an incredibly narrow slice of all possible values, those numbers that those numbers can have. It is therefore incredibly unlikely that a universe like ours would have the kind of numbers compatible with the ability to create life. But against all odds, our universe does. And I'm not going to go into the rest of it, but if you're interested in it, it is from, it's called Aeon, A-E-O-N, and you can find them if you Google them. You can find that article there. It's written by a fellow that is a philosopher. He's from the University of Budapest. Interesting article, though. But consider, because this is one of the big points of contention, if you will. Well, was God the God of the Old Testament? Well, first we have to ask, which God of the Old Testament? Because the God in the second chapter of Genesis is an anthropomorphic God that walked through the garden. But the God of creation in Genesis 1 is a spiritual beingness. So how do we understand that? You know the story. You wouldn't be watching the show at this point if you didn't have some understanding. But in today's terms, science is seeking to kind of figure out what it is. And for a long time, science said, okay, well, we can take the Old Testament story, put it on the shelf because it's not important, doesn't count, and doesn't relate to us. And then as science began and continues to unfold, they're beginning to maybe reconsider. Now, they're not going back to the Old Testament understanding of what God is, but if you read this article a little bit further that I shared this first part from, one of the things that physicists are beginning to look at is the idea that the universe, which is so fine-tuned to have life, and not only to have life, but to have life that expresses consciousness, must be some form of infinite consciousness. Now, this is something Ernest Holmes and New Thought people have been talking since New Thought, kind of came about, this idea of consciousness. Conscious consciousness. We are created, we're told, in the image, the likeness, the nature of God. Well, if God is consciousness and we are the highest level of consciousness in this expression that is our life, maybe kind of works for me. But if that's so, and I accept that as being so, that we are an individualized aspect of the divine consciousness, the consciousness that is creative, that it's actually more than just our idea of consciousness. It is a concept of energy. It's a concept of a level of intelligence within that energy, and through that it is creative. And as I said, that this idea of one life, what we think about as life, we think about mainly in the Western part of the world. We think about mainly, human beings were at the highest level of consciousness, and then we have our next highest, which would be our dogs or cats, or I'm joking, whatever it is, right? Then we move down the ladder until we get to the point of where we don't believe consciousness exists in life at that level. But Eastern teachers looked at it a little bit differently, and if you're familiar with Eastern philosophy, you'll be very familiar with this idea that they believe that life sleeps in the rock, in the hard material, right? Life stirs in the grasses, in other words, in plants, dreams in the animals, and awakens in humanity. And that's probably a better way to look at it, because, even if you take things of a material level, once we break it down, we get down to this subatomic level. There's a lot of things going on there. So if life is energy and motion, well, there's definitely a lot of life in this table that I don't experience, but doesn't mean that it's not there. So just like everything else, our understanding will continue to grow as we look at things. But if you accept the divine principle as consciousness in some form, and you are a conscious being, and there is but one life, we're all related, we're all one. It was a hard teaching for me last Sunday, but it was an important one. Here in the Western United States, and probably throughout the country, people had their emotions in an uproar over some very violent and terrible things that happened as a result of the drug cartels south of the border, massacring some mothers and their children. It happened. Life is not always pretty, but life seeks to express itself. How do we view that incident? Well, we view it as something that we need to put up boundaries for, absolutely. But those individuals that perpetrated the incident, the drug cartel members, how do we see them? That becomes our challenge. You see, there's either God as the creator of all that is, or there's God and something else. If you accept God as universally present, that it expresses in all of its creation, then we have to embrace those individuals also as an expression of the divine. And therefore, within our own hearts, within our own beingness, we can still hold them in a consciousness of love. But we don't have to hold them in a consciousness of accepting. We can set up and establish good boundaries. And I'm talking about boundaries within ourselves. We can seek to create, as I said, a better life, a better me, that I, through my me being a better me, creates a better world. That's what we're tasked with individually, each and every one of us. Can you meet that challenge within yourself? It can be hard, but we can do it. We can all do it. The master teacher said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. love God with all that you are. Now, in that statement, loving God with all that we are, we have to understand if God is all that is, and God is all that is, and we're loving God with all that we are, that means we have to, or we're enjoined to love ourselves with all that we are. And as we love ourselves with all that we are, we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And in so doing, we seek to create, uplift, and express a greater life. We talk about life, one life. Life is God. That life is love. You know, I've talked about, you know, as practitioners, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the book, but as practitioners, being in alignment with what we call principle, or alignment with God. God is love. It's one of the words that we use to define God. A love far beyond our ability to understand, but an incredible love as is. Holding ourselves to that same standard within ourselves is where we need to be as creative as we can, to live life at a higher degree of livingness. God puts no limits on God's self, so why should we put limits on ourself? If we are created as the sons and daughters in the likeness and the image, the nature. Imagine that. No limit living. And we can do that. We really can. Going on, before we close for today, I got a couple of things. He says, we are all some part of this universal order. The very urge for personal gratification is incomplete until it finds a universal outlet. He says, this is the cause back of all upheavals within human history. Seeking to satisfy something, but doing it in a way that is broken, if you will. He says the pattern is trying to fit the pieces into a greater and greater units as though it could not accomplish its purpose through anything other than the democracy of spirit. I like that. Humanity is made up of innumerable individuals, no two alike, and yet society is a complete whole. Again, when we look out into society, do we see separateness or do we see oneness and unity? What is it we say when we speak our treatments? How do we understand that? Think about that. We'll continue on next time as we move into chapter 2 of this thing called you. This is your life. As you go through the week, know the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you, because wherever you are, literally, God is there, all is well. See you next time.